The Day the Bell Rang by Richard E. Albert. Enoch had just gone to the brook to get a bucket of water when he heard the bell. He stood for a moment listening. Even though it was far away, the sound was clear and mellow, echoing across the countryside. It was July 8th, 1776. Setting his bucket on the ground, Enoch turned abruptly and stepped along a log that spanned the narrow stream. Then he ran toward the field where his father was working. "Father," he shouted, "the bell in the state house is ringing!" His father had heard it too. Turning away from his plough, he looked in the direction of Philadelphia, which lay in the distance along the banks of the Delaware River. "Do you think it's the celebration the peddler was talking about?" Enoch asked his father. "Could be." Enoch remembered the man with the scraggly horse and loaded wagon who had stopped by the farm 4 days ago, bringing news from Philadelphia. He had said that important people were still meeting in the Continental Congress at the State House. Enoch wondered if one of them was Thomas Paine. Enoch's father had nailed a copy of Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, just inside the barn door so he could read a little bit of it every day. "Will the decisions of these important people bring changes to the land?" Enoch had asked. "Yes, indeed," the peddler replied, urging his horse forward. "A cause for celebration, lad." "Could this be the celebration day?" "Can we go see what's happening?" he asked his father now. He thought of all the people who would be gathering in the square on this July morning and of the excitement of being there. "Don't have time," his father answered crisply. "Late ploughing this hayfield as it is." Though disappointed, Enoch knew how important it was to get the crops planted on time. "Could I go myself?" Enoch asked suddenly. He realised it was some distance, but it would be worth the 4-mile walk to find out what the celebration was about. "Well, now, Enoch, I don't know," his father answered slowly, pondering the request. "But if you're willing to try, I can't see any reason why you shouldn't. Be sure to start back in time so you'll get home before dark." Enoch jammed his straw hat down on his head and set out on the road. The sun shimmered off the barn roofs. He was excited, but still wondering about what the man had told his father about the important people meeting at the State House. They had come not only from Massachusetts, but also from other distant places such as Virginia and New York. It would have taken him many days to reach Philadelphia. As he drew near the city, he saw pillars of smoke rising in the air. In a moment of fright, he wondered if the city was burning and the bell had been ringing to warn the people of the fire. He started running to see for himself. Then, entering the street leading to the square, he saw that the smoke was from many bonfires. They too must be part of the celebration. As he moved through the crowd gathered around the State House, the thrill of being there energized him. Men, women, children, tiny ones carried their parents' arms, older ones gazing in wonder as he did, were milling about. Some boys his own age shouted and threw sticks into the bonfires. Enoch thought of joining them, hoping they would let him take part in their fun. But he was so awestruck that he only watched. It was hard to believe there could be so many people in Philadelphia, even in the entire colony. He climbed a tree to have the better view. From near the top, he could still see the men ringing the bell in the State House belfry. Then he noticed 3 men approaching the tree. They stopped for a minute to talk. One, an elderly gentleman, turned and saw Enoch up the tree. The man left his friends and walked over. "I like a boy who climbs a tree to see things better," he said to Enoch. "Do you know what all this is about?" Enoch shook his head, astounded to find that this man knew exactly what he was wondering. The gentleman had a kind face, with little wrinkles around his eyes when he smiled and greying hair that dropped to the back of his collar. He lowered his spectacles to look up at Enoch in the tree. "This is indeed a great time, lad," he said. "But what are all these people doing?" Enoch asked. "And why does the great bell in the State House ring? And why are the bonfires burning?" "Perhaps you don't know it," the elderly gentleman said, "but we have declared ourselves independent from Britain. You will be living in a new country from now on." Enoch dropped down a low branch. A new country? How could it be? The road he had travelled into Philadelphia, the streets, the State House were all the same as they had been the last time he had come to the city. His own home on the farm, the fields his father ploughed, the brook that ran by the house, they were no different from what they had always been. They there were these same green maples in this early part of summer, the same bright buttercups, and the same sunny days. What did he mean by that new country? How could it be, when it was exactly the same as it had been for so long as he could remember? I don't understand, sir, he said, puzzled. Won't I be living in Pennsylvania anymore? You will still be living in Pennsylvania, the man replied, though it will no longer be a colony, but a state, part of a new nation. 4 days ago, a document was adopted by the Continental Congress. It is called the Declaration of Independence. At 12 noon today, it was read aloud from the State House steps. Enoch looked again at the blazing bonfires. Now he could hear all the church bells ringing. What will this new nation be called? Enoch asked the elderly gentleman. The other two men had finished talking, and they turned to look for their companion. Are you coming, Mr. Franklin? One of them asked. I'll be with you shortly, said the elderly man as he turned to Enoch, a twinkle lighting up his eyes behind his spectacles. Enoch's own eyes opened wide. He was talking with the great Benjamin Franklin. He must listen carefully. The new nation, lad, Mr. Franklin said finally, will be called the United States of America. Later that afternoon, Enoch did not follow the road back home. He travelled cross-country, moving swiftly between rows of corns and splashing through streams, until at last he saw his father stopped by the plough and drinking water from a jug. Independence, father, hollered Enoch. A new nation! A flock of startled mallards rose and flew straight across the reddening sky. I heard all about it in town. Mr. Franklin himself told me. Enoch threw his hat into the air. Independence!